So, uh, before starting, let the other people join the uh, class. I would like to tell you something about those who don't know me. My name is S.S. Narvi, and I did my MSc and PhD from Roorkee University long back. Completed PhD in 1985 from Roorkee University, which is now IIT Roorkee, and I'm teaching this subject in this institute for more than 33 years. Now I'm at the verge of retirement. 1.5 years left. So I will be discussing here only the chemistry of fuel and combustion. Combustion will be taken in the form of numerical problem, isn't it? And it will not be discussed separately. Yes, those who are taking tutorial classes, they will give you the problem on combustion and then you have to solve it. I have given such a good note that just by going through one example, you will be able to do all types of problem. So I have supplied those sheets to all the teachers. Whoever is taking your tutorial class will will tell you about that combustion calculation reaction. I also provide you the slides on combustion, so it's not a problem. Then uh, about, you might have not seen the campus still, and the campus has gone under very good or positive change as far as infrastructure is concerned, and lot many things have come up. Now there is uh, no difficulty for the students as far as hostel facility is concerned. Even for the girls, a new hostel of the about 7-story hospital is already ready to be allotted. And for the boys also, 2 new hostels have come up with 15 stories. So 15 floors are there. So that is why the the labs have also gone for a positive change. And every year, after every 2 years, we revise the syllabus according to the need. So, and the campus has also been beautified, and now it is like a very good institute you can see elsewhere. So these are certain positive things, and in this our director's effort is really, present director's effort is highly laudable. He has taken all the pains. He has taken all the pains to to do the positive changes. So this is all about the campus. You can have the videos on newly built hostel, etc., and hostel campus and the institute campus. Now still the 64 plus 10, 74 plus 9, about 82 students have joined, and still I think it is more than 100. So that is why I'm not going to start the. I will wait another 1 or 2 minutes and then we'll share the slides. So this is about the institute. You already know that our campus selection is very good. Campus placement, and now new education policy is also incorporated as either proposed by the government. So the syllabus are being modified according to the new education policy. So things are going in the right direction, that much I can say. And you will not be, rather, this will be, you will not be disappointed by joining the institute, isn't it? And all the facilities is there. So now I'll wait for another 1-2 minutes and then we'll share the slide. So now let us share the slide. I will share it on the screen. So that, are you able to see the slide? Anyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So, and you are able to hear my voice? There is a voice problem with me, isn't it? You have to bear with. I will be thankful if you keep listening properly, isn't it? So, keep your mics off, mute, and I think sufficient number of students have already joined the class, and this time 9 minutes have already gone. So now let us come to the subject, the chemistry of fuel and combustion. The fuel, as you define in English dictionary, are the substances that produce useful energy when they undergo chemical or nuclear reaction. Chemical reaction is a combustion process, and nuclear reaction is that's a nuclear transformation which is taking place. And both these processes give you huge amount of energy which can be utilized. Fuels such as coal, wood, petroleum or natural gas or any other gas provide combustible gas, provide energy when it is burned. It is similar to the type of combustion which is taking place in our body, where the glucose molecule in the mitochondria, they broke down into simpler compounds and they provide energy for metabolic processes. Similarly, some radioactive substances such as plutonium, uranium, and a third generation fuel which is known as thorium. Thorium is a very important fuel as far as India is concerned. India has a large thorium deposit in the southern sea region, and especially the area between India and Sri Lanka, isn't it? There's a huge deposit of thorium is there, and thorium is a fissionable material, and which is we call it third generation nuclear fuel, because upon fission, it gives you another fissionable material, isn't it? So that is why it is being used in certain the third generation nuclear reactors, isn't it? So uranium, thorium, and plutonium, they provide energy by undergoing nuclear fission reaction. At the same time, lighter nuclei, they undergo fusion reaction to produce energy. So this is only the thing is that in the fusion reaction, just to start the fusion reaction, a huge amount of energy is required. So that is another thing. But uranium and plutonium and thorium, they provide good amount of energy upon undergoing fission reaction. So this is about all types of fuel which are there, but in your syllabus you have only chemical fuels. So we will be discussing only the chemical fuel from now onward. The nuclear fuel will be taken up or might have been taken by in the physics syllabus. It's a part of physics syllabus. So we will be only discussing the chemical fuels. Now coming over to the chemical fuel is any compound that has stored energy, and that energy is stored in the fuel material in the form of a chemical bonds, isn't it? In the form of chemical bonds. How these bonds have been generated in fuel molecules or fuel material? It is stored in the form of by the process of in the form of chemical bond by the process of photosynthesis and respiration. So energy is released, and the energy is released during oxidation or combustion, and energy is liberated for doing purposeful work. Now, the all type of chemical fuel, they are also known as fossil fuel, because they are obtained by mining from the earth. And how they have been deposited there? There is a two types of theories are there: drift theory and the in situ theory, which says that the plant material and the animal and plant, they store energy in the form of chemical bond by the process of photosynthesis and respiration, isn't it? And when these plants and animal, they are buried in the earth due to certain natural processes, isn't it? And they gets converted into the coal and petroleum and natural gas. So mainly the sun energy, it is the sun energy which forms chemical bond, isn't it? Energy rich chemical bonds are created using the energy from the sun, which is released when the fuel is burned. So chemical fuels or the fossil fuels are useful reserves of fuel and are therefore used extensively to satisfy the demand of energy dependent civilization. So now coming over to the chemical fuel or uh, defining of the chemical fuel or fossil fuel. You see, the one thing about chemical fuel or the fossil fuel is that all combustible, all of them are combustible. Unless they are not combustible, they cannot be used as fuel. But all combustible substances are not fuel, isn't it? Anything which undergoes combustion, isn't it? It is not a fuel, isn't it? Fuel is one which can give huge amount of energy upon combustion, and yes, gives huge amount of energy which can be utilized economically for doing purposeful work. Anything which is combustible but which is not economical as a fuel, cannot be termed as a fuel. For example, if you have graphite, or suppose you have diamond, isn't it? Diamond is purely is a carbon, isn't it? Some metal ions are trapped inside, which gives the uh, color to these precious stones. But diamond is basically a carbon. It's a carbon allotrope, isn't it? So now you, if you try to burn the carbon, yes, a diamond, yes, you can burn it. Its ignition temperature may be slightly higher, but who would like to prepare uh, a cup of coffee by burning a piece of diamond? So therefore, diamond and graphite, and similarly, graphite has very good other uses, such as it can be used as electrode, it can be used for many other purposes, isn't it? As a lubricant. So it has other uses. More important uses of graphite is there. So therefore, if you burn amount of graphite which is highly valuable, and you would never like to prepare your a cup of coffee by burning the graphite or diamond. What does it mean? That anything which is everything which is combustible is not a fuel, isn't it? Only those therefore you can define fuel can be defined as any combustible substance which upon proper ignition, when we call it proper ignition means the combustion or ignition in presence of sufficient amount of air and oxygen. So when it undergoes proper ignition, gives a large amount of energy which can be utilized economically for doing purposeful work. So anything which is economical as a fuel, only then that can be termed as a fuel. Not all the combustible substances cannot be termed as a fuel. Now, what happens from where the energy you are getting? You see, fuel molecule have three types of component. Fuel material, they have three types of component. One is carbon and hydrogen, which is a major component. Then you have nitrogen, sulfur and oxygen, they are the minor components. Both carbon, hydrogen and the small amount of nitrogen and sulfur, when they undergo combustion process, they release energy, yes, both nitrogen as well as sulfur also, but it is obtained in very small amount. Compounds of nitrogen and sulfur inside the in the coal is very small. Largely it is carbon and hydrogen. So major component is carbon and hydrogen. Minor component is nitrogen and sulfur. Oxygen helps in burning, isn't it? Which is also a minor component. But there is also certain rare component. Rare components are silica, may be there. You may have metal ion there, isn't it? You may have metal oxides there trapped in. So those things will not take part in combustion, they will not be ignited, isn't it? So and therefore they will not release energy. But they are the minor components of fuel. So you see, I have told you that the energy is stored in the fuel molecule or fuel structure and in the form of chemical bond. How these bonds have generated? High energy content means high energy bonds are there. High energy bonds are there. When you these bonds are formed by process of photosynthesis and respiration. So they have taken energy from the sun, get converted into fuel material. Now, when this fuel material, which is having high energy content, undergoes combustion reaction in presence of O2, oxygen, it gives you highly stable product. That is, you see, major is carbon and hydrogen, so major products will be carbon dioxide and water molecule. Similarly, a small amount of nitrogen compounds are there, so it will burn to give you oxides of nitrogen, and sulfur will burn you, sulfur compound will burn you to give you oxide of sulfur. But since nitrogen and sulfur, they are small or the minor component, I have not written it here. Major component will be carbon dioxide and water molecule. You see, both these molecules are having, they are highly stable. What does it mean? Stable, that they have lowest energy content. They are having lowest energy content. So a system has changed by the oxidation process from a high energy content to lowest energy content. So remaining energy comes out in the form of heat energy, and part of it comes out as a light energy. So this is how you get energy upon combustion of fuel. Now fossil fuels are principally, why we call it fossil fuel, I have told you that they are obtained from the earth. They have been converted into this form by the uh, by the when by the process of decaying process, where these plant material and the animal material gets converted into fossil fuel, that is either coal or petroleum or natural gas. So all the fossil fuel, they are principally hydrocarbons. Hydrocarbon, that is compounds of hydrogen and carbon. Only they are mainly the principally hydrocarbon with minor impurities such as some compounds of nitrogen or sulfur may also be. Hello, 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 कुछ पूछना है? So hydrocarbons with minor impurities such as uh, some some silica particle may be there, metal oxides may be there, isn't it? Which will not take part in combustion reaction, and some oxides of some compounds of organic compounds of nitrogen and sulfur may also be there. So that is why, but mainly it is hydrocarbon. So they are so termed because they originate from the decayed and fossilized remains of plants and animals that lived billions of years ago, isn't it? So when they have rather buried inside the earth by the natural process, such as the earthquake, etc., they have gone down and they have been converted into fossil fuel. Now, let us uh, try to evaluate that how much energy can be released from coal. Suppose you take 1 kg of coal, then how much energy will be released in the process? You see, coal is not purely carbon, I have told you. It has hydrogen, it has oxides of nitrogen and the compounds of nitrogen and sulfur, isn't it? It may have the silica particle, isn't it? It may also have the oxides of metal, etc. So all these compounds are there. But suppose if you consider that whatever coal you have taken, it is 100%, it is having 100% carbon-carbon single bond. Suppose you, because in coal, it is not even in the combustible coal also, it's not only all the bonds are carbon-carbon bond, because hydrogen is there. So carbon-hydrogen single bond may be there, carbon-carbon double bond is there, carbon-carbon triple bonds are there, isn't it? They are also having the aromatic polymeric structure. Then they have aliphatic, the aliphatic structures, the closed ring structures as well. So all the bonds are not carbon-carbon single bond, but good amount of bond is carbon-carbon single bond. So now if you consider or assume that all the bonds in the coal, 1 kg of coal, it is carbon-carbon single bond. If you assume it, though it is not, I have told you, if you assume it and then you try to get the energetics from this, how much energy will be released, and The product will be then only carbon dioxide if proper ignition has taken place, isn't it? So from pure carbon system, you will get the product of combustion will be carbon dioxide. So now try to get the energetics of uh, combustion. You see what happens in a chemical reaction. The old bonds are broken and new bonds are formed. Old bonds are broken and new bonds are formed. So here you have 1 mole of suppose 12 gram, 1 mole, all carbon-carbon single bond. You assume it, it's not true. You assume it that all bonds are carbon-carbon single bond, isn't it? And so when upon combustion, what will happen? This bond has to be broken, isn't it? And also during combustion, you require oxygen molecule. So this oxygen O double bond will be broken. So energy will be consumed in the breaking of this carbon-carbon single bond and oxygen-oxygen double bond. So how much energy will be required to break the bond? 83 kilocalories per mole for carbon-carbon single bond, isn't it? For 1 mole, isn't it? For oxygen-oxygen double bond, you require 119 kilocalories of energy, isn't it? So total energy required for the old bonds, breaking of the old bond will be 202 kilocalories per mole. Now, as a result of product formation, you are getting a mole of carbon dioxide. Now, carbon dioxide, each molecule of carbon dioxide has two carbon oxygen double bonds, isn't it? Two. And one carbon oxygen double bond formation releases 177 kilocalories of energy. So there are two of them. So you multiply it by two. So you are left with 354 kilocalories of energy per mole of uh, pure pure coal, which is we have assumed that it is carbon-carbon single bond. So now how much energy will be released then? Because energy released is 354 and energy used for the breaking of the old bond is 202. So there is a net release of 152 kilocalories of energy. So 12 gram of carbon, if you have pure carbon, isn't it? Then it will yield 152 kilocalories of energy provided sufficient oxygen is available. If sufficient oxygen is not available, then some of it may form carbon monoxide. So complete combustion will not take place. So for proper ignition, sufficient amount of oxygen is required, and then it will liberate 152 kilocalories. But you see, as a carbon-carbon single bond, it has impurities, it has carbon-hydrogen bond, it has carbon-carbon double bond, it has carbon-carbon triple bond. And many impurities are also there, such as silica, oxides of metal iron. You see, the ash after burning wood or coal, whatever ash you get, the ash content is nothing but oxides of metal, which is non-combustible, though they make a part of coal initially, isn't it? But upon combustion, they will be remain unburned, so that part will not be utilized. So, 1 kg of the average Indian coal releases about 4,000 to 5,000 kilocalories of energy. This much huge amount of energy is released by combustion process. Now coming back to let us discuss uh, the fossil fuel one by one, isn't it? A brief introductory remarks for the fossil fuel. The most important fossil fuel which we are getting here. So fossil fuel is the petroleum which we obtained in the form of crude oil. Petroleum you obtain in the form of crude oil by bore wells, isn't it? For the oil well, from the oil well, you are getting crude oil. Petroleum, that is crude oil. or kacha tel, crude oil. Now you see, we will discuss the petroleum in detail, isn't it? So I'm not going to discuss more about the crude oil here, isn't it? And from where and how crude oil gets converted into various other fractions. Simply, the most important fuel is the petroleum or crude oil. This is a liquid fuel. This is a mixture of light, simple hydrocarbon, isn't it? Dominated by the fractions of 6 to 16 carbon atom, isn't it? Dominated by mainly the hydrocarbon has 6 to 16 carbon atoms, isn't it? Yes, hydrogen is there, but carbon number of carbon atom is both. It's the olefinic type, the paraffinic type hydrocarbon, maybe cyclic structures are also there, isn't it? Or aromatic structures are also there. So all types of things are there, but total number of carbon, which is generally which is dominated in the petroleum is from 6 to 16 carbon, but also contains some light hydrocarbon, isn't it? Such as ethane, methane, ethane, propane, and butane. All these methane, ethane, propane, and butane, they are present in the form of gas, and they are all known as natural gas. Natural gas, isn't it? Natural gas is nothing. It is largely methane with a small amount of ethane and propane and very small amount of butane. So now these are present in the top layer of the oil reserves, isn't it? Oil deposits. In the oil deposits, the top layer consists of natural gas. So when you dig a well to take out the petroleum, the first to come out will be natural gas. So this is the but there are certain high molecular weight components as well. That is from almost 22 carbon atom to 37 carbon atom, isn't it? Mainly they are in the form of waxes, isn't it? But their concentration or presence is they are not dominant, but depending upon the area from which they have been taken out, so it varies, isn't it? And we'll discuss it while discussing the petroleum. But you keep in mind that various types of fractions are there in the petroleum. Lighter one from C1 to C4, they are in the form of natural gas. From C6 or C5 to up to 16, C16, they are in the form of liquid, isn't it? But higher molecular weight components, such as though many compounds are there, which contains generally their presence is less, but they have good amount, and they are also there, and they are in the form of waxes, which can be utilized for polymer industry, for pharmaceutical industry, for cosmetic industry, isn't it? So all this type of uh, are there. So petroleum is the most important fuel, and the total energy needs of the mankind, isn't it? Out of the total energy needs of mankind, 40%, nearly 40% is fulfilled by petroleum. This is very important. That most important fuel as on today, it is petroleum. Our 40% energy need is being provided by petroleum. Now let me take the attendance first, and whether
Sir,
बताएं.
sir, which layer you said the gases lie in petroleum?
Gases,
And the natural gases, methane, ethane, propane, they lies in some layer of petroleum. Which layer,
the
sir?
top layer
Of
of
the top layer.
top layer of the petroleum reserves or deposits, isn't it? Wherever inside the earth, wherever there is a petroleum, the top layer of that will be having, because you see, this petroleum or petrol, the crude oil, they are present in the the rock holes, isn't it? Rock holes inside the. That is why they are not known as petroleum, isn't it? Petra means rock, isn't it? Oleum means soil. So that is why it is termed as petroleum, isn't it? So generally they are present in the, but the top layer of it, it is it contains natural gas, the top layer. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So this is about, there is another, you see, whatever total petroleum we are getting, we need petroleum byproducts, isn't it? Where fractionated petroleum, where various different types of fractions are taken. So out of the total petroleum or the crude oil which we obtain, we need 40% in the form of gasoline. Gasoline, which is being available there in the petrol pumps, is known as gasoline. Rather than, now alcohol is slightly mixed up to 10% in the gasoline. So mostly now it is known as gasohol, which you obtain for your motorbikes, isn't it? From the from the petrol pumps. So it is gasoline mainly or gasohol. So we need 40% of total production of the petroleum we need in the form of gasoline, isn't it? 27% we need in the form of fuel oil or diesel. For jet fuel or kerosene, we need 7 to 8%. Is a requirement. This is a requirement that gasoline we need 40%, diesel oil or fuel oil we need about 27%, jet fuel about 7 to 8%, and remaining 10% is about 10% is used for polymer industry, isn't it? Synthesis of first thousands of petrochemicals and which are used in our daily lives. And then polymer industry, I must add polymer here, isn't it? Pharmaceuticals, many food compounds, polymer industry, and pharmaceutical, isn't it? So all this polymer and pharmaceutical, and that also include the cosmetic. Cosmetic is also part of pharmaceutical. So this you have to, only 10% of this is required. And you see, for all this polymer industry, for pharmaceutical industry, or when it is used as food additive, isn't it? Or cosmetic industry, isn't it? Only high molecular weight components are required, isn't it? That is, which are which are in the form of waxes, isn't it? Which is in the form of waxes. So all that is required, it is in the form of waxes or high molecular weight components. But the total requirement is just 10% of the total petroleum we obtained. So this requirement is very less as compared to gasoline, as compared to fuel oil or diesel, isn't it? It is very less. So therefore, majority of it, of the petroleum we are using as a as a fuel, as a fuel for our electricity generation for the automobile industry, etc., isn't it? For recreational vehicles, etc. So this is being used. So mainly when you add gasoline, 40% and 27% it is the fuel oil or diesel. Now coming over to the second most important fuel, that is coal. The coal fulfills near about 23 to 24% of our total energy need. That is 22, 23 to 24% of our total energy need is being fulfilled by coal. Coal is also, we have abundant, a good amount of coal deposits in India. We are fifth in the world. Russia, US, Canada, then China, isn't it? And fifth is India. So India has the largest coal, very good coal deposit, which can fulfill our energy requirement for near about 300 years, isn't it? So good amount of coal is there. But coal also originates from the decayed vegetative material buried years ago, but the process is slightly different, isn't it? And depending upon the nature of the environment, or and the deposits, the age of the deposit, it gets converted into coal and then into petroleum. So the resulting material still has some of the original, the coal, which is a solid fuel, it still has some original lignin structure which were present in the plant material, isn't it? Then certain fusing structures are there. Some fraction of aromatic compounds are also there. So consequently, coal is more of polymeric substance than petroleum and is found as a solid and not as a liquid. The carbon to hydrogen ratio in the coal is about 1:1. Now you can see that we cannot consider. That is why, according to the calculation which we have shown, if you take 12 gram of coal, if all coal has carbon-carbon single bond, isn't it? Then how much energy will be there? About 11,000 kilocalories energy will be released by 1 kg of coal. But since there is impurity, there is carbon-hydrogen bond, sulfur compounds are there, nitrogen compounds are there. So that is why it comes out to be about the average bituminous coal gives you about 4 to 5,000 kilocalories of energy. But pure, or you can say anthracite energy is about 8,000 kilocalories. But mainly we are getting bituminous coal. So the carbon to hydrogen ratio in coal is about 1:1. In petroleum, because there is a small molecular weight components, there is a large molecular weight component. Therefore, the average ratio of petroleum to, that is carbon to hydrogen, is around slightly more than 1:2. Slightly more than 1:2, depending upon how many, what is the type of petroleum from which region you are obtained, isn't it? So this we'll discuss later on.
So,
Then, yes.
sir, I have a small thing to clarify. So,
Yeah,
when we
please.
talk about coal, then we consider that it has primarily carbon-carbon single bond, right?
No, we cannot, we are assuming.
Okay, but it can have even double and triple bond, but we don't consider them in calculation of energy.
Then you say, because if you say double bond considered, then energy will become slightly more or less, isn't it? Because if there are carbon-carbon double bonds are there, isn't it? Means suppose one carbon-carbon double bond is there. So 2 carbon will be having other 3 carbon bonds. Otherwise, every carbon has 4 bonds, isn't it? So in that way, if you consider, so that is why you got my point or not?
Yes, sir. But like if it is given the bond enthalpy of the double bond, then we don't have to consider it, or do we have to consider it?
Then because we don't know that how much double bonds are there. Analysis of coal is not very easy, isn't it? Just we are assuming, suppose that all the bonds are carbon-carbon single bond. Then how much energy would have evolved from 1 kg of coal? It is about 12,000 kilocalories. But since all bonds are not carbon-carbon single bond, there's carbon-carbon double bond, carbon-carbon triple bond, isn't it? Carbon-carbon triple bond and carbon-hydrogen bond, because the ratio of carbon to hydrogen is 1:1. Similarly, you have impurities such as silica, which will not burn. You have impurities such as metal oxides, which will not burn, isn't it? You are getting my point?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Understood.
That is why it comes out to be 4,000 to 500 kilocalories. By our Indian average, Indian coal gives you this much energy. Okay?
Okay, sir. Understood. Thank you.
So the third major fossil fuel, you can say it is the natural gas, isn't it? Natural gas, as I've told you earlier, that it is mainly methane, about 92% or 95%. Remaining is uh, the ethane, propane, and butane. So that is why it comes out to be, average comes out to be very close to 1:4. It's not exactly 1:4, carbon to hydrogen ratio, because it is not all the, everything is it's not methane, and it's not 100% methane, because ethane is there where the carbon to hydrogen ratio is 3, isn't it? So that is why it will not come out to exactly 1:4, but it is very close to 1:4. Now, by burning natural gas, the advantage of the natural gas is that it will produce less carbon emission, isn't it? Carbon emission will be less. So, because carbon dioxide, which is formed as a product, is a greenhouse gas. Yes, water is also a greenhouse gas, but water absorbs in low, in a very broad, very less energy region, infrared region. So that is why, though it is a greenhouse gas, but it cannot be, it is not included. But major energy, this gas is greenhouse gas. The carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. So it will cause for global warming and pollution, etc., isn't it? But for that matter, you can see that uh, all organic compounds, they also generate carbon dioxide on combustion. So the advantage is that natural gas will emit lesser oxygen lesser carbon dioxide as compared to the that is petroleum products, isn't it? Or wood, isn't it? So that is why this is a slightly better one, and the energy evolved in the process is very, very high. So good amount of energy you can get out of it. And one advantage is that natural gas is also easily transported through pressurized pipelines. So these are certain advantages. Another advantage of natural gas, that it can be considered as renewable, isn't it? Natural gas can be considered as a renewable source of energy, because largely it is methane, and methane can be obtained by many other ways, such as garbage dump, where the methanogenic bacteria, they act upon the waste disposal sites or waste, isn't it? Decaying waste, and they produce the methane gas. So methane gas can be obtained from the garbage dumps. isn't it? Similarly, the rice field, you can get from the methane from the rice field. So that is also there. So one advantage of the natural gas that it is can be considered as renewable source of energy. But then still whatever it is, whether it's small molecule and it may be emitting the carbon dioxide less, but still it is emitting carbon dioxide. So therefore, now people are trying to use hydrogen, and hydrogen is considered as our future generation fuel. Hydrogen is considered as future generation fuel. So this is hydrogen, but the hard dependence of hydrogen is still lies in the form of byproduct which we obtain from oil refineries. So again, you can see that we are largely dependent upon oil refineries, isn't it? So still that limitation is there. And another disadvantage is that hydrogen cannot be burned directly with oxygen because it is highly explosive. And one such example is Hindenburg disaster, where airship which was filled with hydrogen, upon explosion, it has converted into broken down into small pieces, isn't it? So it's not very, though it's a very good fuel because it will not, you will not get any carbon emission from hydrogen. But the direct use of hydrogen for combustion is not easy, isn't it? Therefore, people are trying to use this hydrogen in the form of fuel cell, where fuel cell you have two electrodes on one side, hydrogen is there, another side oxygen is there, isn't it? They they got they get electrodes and they produce electricity. And now this electricity, because this combustion or it is another type of combustion, electrocombustion reaction, is where hydrogen and oxygen they combine to give you water, isn't as the product, and good amount of energy as you are getting in the direct combustion of hydrogen is released in the fuel cell, isn't it? And therefore, this electricity which is released can be used to produce electricity and then which can be used to run the electric motor or spacecraft. So similar type, this technology was used by NASA for a very long time and they are using it, the hydrogen fuel cell technology. Hydrogen fuel cell technology they are using for years now and they provide electricity for both manned and unmanned spacecraft. In addition to this, fuel cell have added bonus of providing crew members with fresh drinking water as the only product of reaction is pure water. So that is why the hydrogen is a natural, the future fuel of the future. But still we are dependent upon, for the hydrogen we are still dependent upon the petroleum refineries. Now coming over to another thing that people are now trying, still it is a way ahead, but people are trying economical method by which water can be electrolyzed or split by taking sunlight in the form of solar panel. It can absorb sunlight from the solar panel and utilize it for electrolyzing water or splitting water. They will absorb energy from the sunlight to split water in order to get hydrogen and oxygen. And then this hydrogen and oxygen will be utilized, isn't it? Will be utilized for in the fuel cell to again combine where hydrogen and oxygen will again combine and will give you the energy. So it's an indirect conversion of sunlight into electrical energy. Sunlight into electrical energy, isn't it? So this technology is under because it's not very economical if people are still trying. You see, the religion of a scientist is to keep on trying, isn't it? With the available natural things, isn't it? So now people are now trying to use methanol as a potential partner for fuel cell, isn't it? Because methanol, you know, that is it is renewable. Many things can be converted into methanol, isn't it? Methanol can be easily produced and is renewable, and you can convert from many materials. You can convert it into methanol. So now presently people are trying to use methanol as a source for fuel cell, isn't it? So this is another thing. Then now coming over to the same thing which I was discussing with you earlier, that petroleum energy, total energy which we required by the mankind, 39% or 40% is fulfilled by petroleum, 24% by natural gas, and 24 to 25% by coal, 7% by hydroelectricity, and 6% only by nuclear uh, power plants. Though nuclear power plants are very good source of energy, isn't it? And they are also more safe. And since India is having thorium, a huge amount of thorium, isn't it? Thorium deposits, isn't it? Which can be utilized, which is a very powerful third generation fuel where the thorium will undergo fission reaction to produce another fissionable material. So that is why it is very important and is termed as third generation fuel. So now the time is up because people have joined late. That is why, so from the next turn, we'll discuss the classification of fuel. You please remember this, that I have covered up to 16 slides and it is more than 100 something. So 16 slide to 17, that is classification of fuel, will be taken up. Now I stop the recording so that it is saved for your future reference.